Alright, if you thought snakes on a plane was crazy, just wait until you hear what was on this boat. And no, it's not more snakes. What's up guys, I'm Sully, and today we're talking about the brand new Dracula horror film, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. All you need to know about this one is that the story goes like this. Strange and horrifying events befall the doomed crew as they attempt to survive the ocean voyage from Transylvania to London, stalked each night by a merciless presence on board the ship, a legendary vampire known as Dracula. When the Demeter finally arrives off the shores of England, it is a charred, derelict wreck without a single crew member left in sight. So I gotta be honest, I kind of have a little bit of a rocky, toxic relationship with vampire movies. I mean, some of the more prominent ones I really love. Nosferatu, Let the Right One In, 30 Days of Night. I think all of those are great and they're super entertaining. But for as many good ones as there are, there's an equal and longer list of ones that are total stinkers. When I first heard they were making this movie though, being a huge horror fan, I was definitely excited to see what they were going to do with it. I just liked the idea that they were going to adapt the single chapter from Bram Stoker's Dracula novel from the perspective of the captain's log, and it gave us a little bit more background information on how the Prince of Darkness himself got his ass from Transylvania all the way over to London. And after knowing the setup for this one, you're going to see a lot of comparisons to other creature horror movies that take place in a confined area like The Thing and Alien, because it's basically a monster-driven slasher film at its core. Obviously, those two movies are godlike and impossible to live up to, and it's hard to recreate the isolation and claustrophobia of something like the Nostromo from Alien. It's nowhere near as effective, but this old-ass wooden ship still works pretty well in that regard. There just aren't a ton of rooms to hide in, and even less have locks on them, so if a bloodthirsty beast wants to get in there and turn you into an appetizer, nothing is stopping him from doing so. And sticking with the vampire of the hour here, I'm seeing some people saying that they don't like the way Dracula looks in this movie, and I just have to disagree with them there. I mean, I really thought it was a fresh take on what we usually expect him to look like. Like, this was never supposed to be the slick-talking lady killer we've seen countless times. There's so many different versions of the character over the years, going back to Bela Lugosi, all the way more recently to Nicolas Cage, but this version was built for one thing and one thing only, and that's to survive. And I think it's perfectly depicted in his character design this time around. What we see in this movie is basically what happens if you mix Gollum with a pterodactyl, and I dig it. This movie just has a really cool looking aesthetic in general, and it's the kind of horror film that I would actually love to see a black and white cut of. The visuals left me really impressed, especially when it comes to the setting of this movie, because the majority of the film takes place on the sea, during the night, in the middle of a rainstorm. If you're going to do that, you have to make sure you're going to bring your A game, otherwise I won't be able to see shit. And lucky for us, the guy behind the camera this time around is Andre Overdahl, whose movies always have a pretty solid look to them, and the more stuff I see from him, the more I become a fan. I like scary stories to tell in the dark, but I love Troll Hunters and The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and this movie might be the one from him that I enjoy watching the least, but I still have more positive things than negative things to say about it, so when it comes to making decent horror movies, he's still batting 1,000 for me. Jumping over to the cast here, I thought everyone was pretty solid, and this movie is filled with dudes top to bottom that you definitely know from other stuff. Liam Cunningham plays the captain of the Demeter. You'll know him as the Onion Knight, Sir Davos from Game of Thrones. Absolutely love that character, so I was pumped to see him in this. And then you have David Dastmalchian, who has been popping up everywhere recently, most notably in Dune and The Suicide Squad. And he continues his streak of good performances here as the ship's first mate, but the guy this whole movie is based around is Corey Hawkins, and I have to admit, I don't have too much of a history with him outside of stuff like The Walking Dead and Kong Skull Island, two projects that I've never been too keen on, but he does a really good job playing the character that this whole story is anchored around. He's really the guy we learn the most about. He drives what plot there is forward, and he devises the plan for how they're going to go toe-to-toe with Dracula. And getting to the actual bits with Dracula, like the horror and the gore, they gave me a lot of what I wanted to see here. There's some gnarly kills, there's some good practical effects around him, and the atmosphere his character brings is a massive strong suit of this movie. But I gotta say though, when push comes to shove, I really think there's just too much downtime in between all of the deaths here. Not every movie has to be 2 hours long. Maybe shave this puppy down by 15, 20 minutes, get rid of some of the idle chatter between the lesser characters, and you'd have a tighter package. Like, we know that this was a single chapter of a book for a reason. It shouldn't overstay its welcome, but I think it kinda does here. And then the last negative thing I'll say about this movie is a big one, unfortunately. I really did not vibe with how the film ended. From very early on, we know how the story of this movie is going to go, and I just wish they committed to that and left it there. They decided to put a little spin on the tail end of this movie, kind of make it more open-ended, and that honestly just made this whole journey feel less satisfying for me. Like, if they're going to make another one of these things, that's fine, but the first scene of the sequel should have been what they put in here at the end of this movie. I honestly felt like I was being punked. Overall, guys, I mostly enjoyed my time with this movie, but I can't help thinking there's a much better horror film in here if you were to cut out some of the fluff, keep the monster a little more hidden, and stick to the game plan when it comes to the ending. If this movie's gonna hit a home run for anybody, it's gonna be for the guy who's a massive fan of the Dracula novel and loves these kinds of period piece horror movies. But for casual audiences, I don't know if there's enough meat and potatoes here to keep them invested the whole way through. The practical effects, the musical score, and the performances have to be commended, but I just don't see myself taking this journey again anytime soon. The Last Voyage of the Demeter gets a Sully score of 3 stars. So that's my review of the latest Dracula movie. What's your favorite vampire film ever? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys at the next one.